Hello and welcome to FAC Creative's podcast, Voices. I'm your host, Walter Talents, Vice President of FAC Creative, and this is my lovely co-host, Arlene
Della Pena.
Or as we've known before, as Arlene from The Rock.
Yes.
I love
Arlene
it.
of The Rock.
Of The Rock.
Yes.
I love it because it reminds me of Game of Thrones. It's like such a...
I mean, it is very prestigious, you know?
Of The Rock. Just
we're
not
all like
under the
solid rock dwellers. That's where the Della Penas come from Spain.
There you go. Whoa, jinx.
Oh my God. And we both wore blue today.
Yes, and this FAC Creative, we are an organization of just creative Filipino Americans with the idea of just coming together and supporting each other in our endeavors for being, whether it's filmmaking, graphics, fashion, or anything basically creative related, right?
And we're coming to you from Los Angeles, California, right here at PWC in historic Filipino town.
Filipino Worker Center. And you can find them on their website, pwcsc.org. They are a great supporter of FAC Creative. And it's a great organization. Just they basically advocate for immigrants and domestic workers that not just Filipinos, but just any immigrants from different countries, but with the focus on Filipino immigrants. Wonderful group. Shout out to Malu, big supporter of FAC Creative.
Thank you.
And so, how you been? Like, it's been a few days since I last saw you. Like, yeah, how's the?
I feel like I see you all the time now. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have to always talk about aside from just gossiping, we got to talk about like just projects and FAC Creative stuff.
Yeah.
But
didn't you just get done doing some army training recently?
Yeah, I did. I mean, it's just that, because Filipinos, like a lot of us we've served in the military, mostly Navy, but yeah, I'm in the Army Reserve. So I think just the history of like training, but yes, like we have to update. So I was at the range recently, so getting my pew-pew on.
What did you qualify?
I qualify sharpshooter usually. I still try to get expert.
Ah, dude.
I am an expert machine guns.
What are you what weapon were you using?
We use M4s.
Oh, M4s, okay. I'm an expert shot on an M4.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
I mean,
M4, M16.
I'll let you guys know.
9mm.
Women are I will admit, women are historically better shooters. As a man who,
Fact.
It's fact. I'm not even gonna try to sugarcoat it. Like historically, women are better shooters just because they're. I don't know why.
My training goes back to when I was a child, though, because when I was 10 years old, my dad would make me practice breathing technique, and he would put the dimes on the rifle, and if I could just pull the trigger slowly enough and not drop the dimes.
Sure, but you're like an army brat, though, like, right? Your dad was
Yeah, my dad was that crazy drill sergeant, and so I was a soldier for life, according to him. He told me I will always be a private. But, I got out as a captain, so,
there you go. Hey, you got, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you.
It's like Filipino Americans have been serving in the military since America took Philippines from the Spanish.
History lessons by Walter Talents.
Sorry, that just got deep real for a second there.
And dark. A little bit dark. Well, we have an awesome guest today. We have Tim Cruz.
He is a producer. He's a music video director, but now he's moving on to big time feature film producing. Yeah. He was also he did the Producers Guild of America fellowship, or he's gonna tell. Well, I'm gonna ask him about it. It's such.
He did one of the programs.
He did one of the programs and like basically trying to get more minorities and like people of color.
I heard producers. He's pretty comfortable with a few millions of dollars budgets.
Oh, wow.
That's word on the street. I heard him say.
Word on the street. I think he carries it in a suitcase. That's what I heard.
With big dollar signs on it.
Although that might be something else. So without further ado, we're gonna bring out Tim, and we're gonna speak to him about his endeavors in filmmaking. All right, so give us a second and we'll be right back.
Today's episode brought to you by the good folks at Filipino Worker Center. From the heart of historic Filipino town, PWC focuses on providing programs that help meet the immediate needs of workers and their families, while at the same time building their leadership to take collective action for long-lasting change.
We have a unique esprit, duende, inside us, who has a very special, original framing of the world, okay? Only your duende can frame the world. Every great artist has nurtured his own little duende. And if you understand that process, I mean, by all means, please watch the masters, watch Kurosawa films, watch Godard, watch Coppola, Spielberg, but don't copy them. Understand how their duende blossomed and how it made their masterpieces. Then you can make your own masterpiece.
With a mission to empower Filipino-American creatives within the entertainment industry, we are showcasing these hand-selected short films of all genres on the big screen from our filmmaking community. Please join us on Friday, July 27th at Regency Valley Plaza 6 Theater. Tickets are on sale now at Eventbrite. Just search Filmmakers Night Tickets, or you can find more information on our website at philamcreative.org.
And we are back. We are here with Tim Cruz. He is a music video director and a commercial director and producer.
All the things. Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me, and this is really cool.
I'm so glad you could make it and come join us because you just recently flew back in the States, right?
Yeah, I just got back from Japan in Saga.
Oh, cool.
Saga is the southern part of Japan, and we were there from by the Japanese Film Commission and the Saga Film Commission. We were on scout for our movie, and it was so fun. They were so kind and hospitable, and I'm so jet lagged.
How long were you there for?
We were there for a week.
Oh,
1 week.
cool.
Yeah, I touched down, stayed, and then I had one night in Tokyo, and then flew back, and then we are back there on the 23rd, 24th
Wow.
for 2 weeks. Then I come back here, and then go to the Philippines a month later for the rest of the film. Oh,
It's great.
True
it's
story.
so exhausting.
True story. I was like, when I found out, I was like, hey, you need a personal security detail. You need.
I mean, I'm the expert shot. You will get
But I am the
mediocre shot over here.
Damn.
Dang.
But I'm the blade expert.
There you go.
That's true. I don't do blades.
I know.
I'm
I think a blade in a close combat is probably more dangerous than actually
Then a weapon. Yeah.
than a
then
gun.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just speculating.
No, it's actually amazing. Dan Inosanto, legendary Filipino martial artist here in Los Angeles, the Bruce Lee's friend. He did do a training video with LAPD a while back, and doing that, like how dangerous knives are compared to like pistols or weapons, and like there's a certain distance that it makes it very dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
So fun fact for you viewers.
and then plus in cinema, I think a knife fight is so much more gruesome than an actual gunfight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw what is it, Red Sparrow with
Oh, I'm gonna
with
watch it.
Jennifer Lawrence.
and there is a brutal knife fight in there that it's like you're cringing because like they're showing the slices and
Oh, wow.
and like just I mean they're literally stabbing each other, and a friend of mine who's martial arts is saying that even if you are fighting with a knife, you're gonna get stabbed.
Yeah, you'll get
Even
nicked.
if you win, you'll
For
still get
sure.
hit. You know?
Yeah. Because I train martial arts or Filipino martial arts with like with the Dog Brothers, but even before that, when I used to read up and hear stories about the manongs and like the Filipino masters and stuff, it's almost guaranteed though. They're like, if you're gonna get into a knife fight, you are gonna get cut. Like
Yeah.
there's no ifs and or about it. There are questions about it. It's gonna happen.
Have you done training in combatives?
No, everything's just been like on my own dime, like just doing it. Like
That's great.
I just been a fan of martial arts since I was a kid. So With you filmmaking, like, have you incorporated any martial arts? Speaking of which,
Oh, nice slide into that. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a podcast about filmmaking.
Slick.
It's just like my DMs.
You know, I love watching it, and I just know the concept of blocking, in the choreography of a fight scene is so technically outside what I'm normally familiar with that it's one of those spaces where I'm like, I'm gonna bring in someone who does, you know, fight choreography to supplement what I lack, you know, which is basically, you know, how I tend, you know, operate it when I don't know what to do. And I mean, like, for me, my specialty is in like humor, it's in beauty, it's in comedy as a director. And action is just like, I love watching it. I'm like, I have no idea to even like how to pull that off.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, you accept that.
But I mean, with your experience in music videos too, like you brought in dance choreographers and all that stuff. So it's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's similar in that sense that it's like, oh, you could. Oh, I didn't know you could move your body that way. Wonderful. Go ahead, enjoy. You know, it's like just make sure it's placed this way, and that, you know,
But I imagine
the atmosphere is sustained.
with fight choreography, I mean, you have such a high risk for injuries.
Oh
and,
yeah, absolutely.
And
you
know, depending like if they're using weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, and as a director, you're responsible for that. You are responsible for the safety of all your actors and all your players. So, you know, and in the same sense too, and like filming a sex scene, like I would bring in a fight choreographer for that, because that is all like body movement. That is, you know, you want your actors to feel safe. Just like a fight scene, it should be very well rehearsed, and that the actors are protected in how they interact, because they're intimately vulnerable. You know, it's like someone's breasts are exposed, or you know, the dangle bits are dangling, and it's like, you know, you don't want to. You want both actors to feel comfortable in order for them to bring their best performance forward, because, you know, in my opinion, if I'm going to have a sex scene, there's going to be there's something in there that has to push the narrative.
Right.
Right. I think they did that really well too in Annihilation. There's a movie that just came out, because and it was used as part of her emotional journey, and I think, you know, in that case, you know, it's really important, and as a director, you should protect your actors and definitely help them feel comfortable, just as you would in a fight scene.
Would you do a sex scene?
Yeah. If it's done tastefully.
Okay, as a woman, I feel like there are films out there that there is no need for nudity for this film to tell the story, or sex scenes, and I mean, like, I feel like as a woman, we're always asked, like, oh, okay, are you willing to do, you know, what types of scenes are you comfortable with? And and you are putting a lot of faith in the director, you know, and the rest of the crew. And because, I mean, like, you have like 20 plus people like looking at you, and I've never done it. Sorry, guys. but yeah, if I was ever asked to be in that predicament, I don't know if I could do it. You know, so do you have like those conversations, you know, early on?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And do they change as you're filming, like day of?
I mean, everybody knows sex sells, and one of the big things that's really apparent is one of the ways that you raise film financing is pre-sales, right? So you pre-sell the movie based on the actors attached and things like that. The secondary thing is the content, and in order to almost get like European pre-sales and content, it's almost, there's like this small little, I guess it's a known thing, is that there should be nudity in it, or there should be, you know, because nudity sells in Europe, or at least at the time when pre-sales were at their highest.
And it seems like in Europe, nudity is not
taboo.
That big of a deal.
Sex is not that big of a deal in Europe.
Right, because even on TV, you know, I remember as a child, like, turning on the TV, and you just see, I mean, there's topless beaches everywhere in Europe, and it's not like, I don't know, it's not that
the
big
thing
of a
that they
deal.
actually don't like is violence.
Yeah.
Violence is how America perceives nudity. Like in America, in the United States, it's like as soon as you see nudity, they run away from it. But yeah, I as a director, when someone says, "Oh, there's probably going to be nudity in this," it's like the first thing I ask is it necessary? Because it's also, it slows down production, right? Because what's going to happen is you're going to have to protect the actors, so that you're going to have to close the set, and so there needs to be essentials. And when it's just essentials on set, the set slows down. And then there's also the tension from the actor, and how comfortable they feel. I did a short film a long time ago with a director named Abigail Bean, and she's incredible. She's like she's a writer and director, and she's just got great style. I think I call her, like, if Sofia Coppola wasn't a Coppola, she would be where Sofia Coppola is.
Nice.
And there was a scene where it was these two lovers that are in bed, and they were just laying there in their nudity, and then in there, and I had to close the set. I had to lock it off. It was just a DP sound and her. We had to protect the actors. But at the same time, then the actors started panicking. It's like, I don't feel good. I don't want to be naked right now. And it's like, well, this is really crucial to what your character's journey is. This isn't something that we're just trying to be gratuitous about. This is you laying there vulnerable with this other person. And so it even despite the fact that she agreed to it and everything, it still slowed the day down, because she needed to be coached into being okay with this moment. And then on top of being okay with this moment, she had to be brought to a place where she could perform while vulnerable. And that's tough, and that's hard.
Is nudity different? Well, maybe not nudity, but intimate scenes in music videos, because you've done so many music videos with these major artists.
Absolutely.
And I kind of think back, to music videos growing up, and
oh gosh,
they were so sexy.
And so and they still are. I used to produce these videos for G-Unit called Late Night BET videos, which were pretty much booty videos. Made me feel so. Back then I was okay with it, but now it's like, ooh, I don't like telling people about it. Maybe the shame. I had a different agenda back then, and it was, it was tough because we casted unfortunately at the strip club, and it was like, hey, who wants to be in this video? And they're comfortable with it. It's just. My favorite, though, was one time we had this model come in, and she signed her release form XOXO and hearts and stuff. And I'm like, oh no, we need your information. This is a release. This is a legal binding thing. In order to show you, the record label's not going to accept your stage name.
Yeah.
And she goes, but why? And she was just like, and I was like, oh, we got to do it. And then we find out that she was actually here illegally. And so that she didn't have a proper, so there's, listen, just sign your name, that you release and that you consent that we can use your image for. But anyway, I digress. The music videos do require, but ironically, the MTV has really strict rules on how female and male bodies are portrayed. For instance, if you show a booty or if you show a body part, the next shot corresponding has to contain that model's face, or else it's gratuitous. And if it's
how interesting.
Yeah, their standards and practices, S&P, are actually stricter than most networks. Which is ironic because everyone's like, oh, they just show, all this. No, MTV and VH1 and all the Viacom family have really strict, and they don't want to disparage, people, because old videos used to do that. It was
So give them credit, at least feature their
scene. Well, I just make it not demeaning.
Yeah.
But then there was gray areas where it would be like art, So I don't know. I guess it all leads to what the lawyer feels like that day when they decide on it.
Which way the wind
So Talons, you have a shot to make it into a music video.
I can
Our
work
squat
on it.
challenge.
I gotta do those deadlifts and squats, man.
We have a squat challenge coming up soon.
What are you at? What's the max? What's your max
We
squat?
haven't gotten that far yet in our challenge.
Are you doing goblet squats?
No, just deadlifts and
Deadlifts?
like, we're just basically competing who has the best booty.
I mean, come on, guys, come on.
I don't know if that'll be part of Voices, but I'll have to check with Rodney on that one.
We'll just be featured in Tim's next music video.
And then we'll figure out we'll look at the YouTube analytics on where
Yes.
people tune out. And that's how we decide, like, oh, okay. Okay, your booty works.
So
Clearly.
it'll be like booty then face, booty then face. You know?
I was like,
I wonder if there's analytics of where people pause and take a screenshot.
There
yeah,
you go.
they do. So I think you could do that.
That's funny.
Tell us more about this feature film. So you're traveling all around the world and all over Asia.
Yeah, it's a drama / romantic comedy. It was originally written by Vanessa Elgato, who's a producer that I'd worked with in the Philippines before. And it was a distribution company that actually is distributing a feature film that I wrote called Dancing on My Own. And we are in the works of shooting that in October, September maybe. Who knows? Got to raise that money. But this one is shooting in Saga, Japan, and it is using Japan's very generous rebate and subsidy, where they basically pay for half of whatever you spend in country.
Ooh.
And so then you take money against that, raise that pre-finance, and match it with a liquid investor. And then so that is looking to shoot in the 24th. It's about a woman who was left at the altar 3 years ago, and the man returns to town, and she decides to make his life a living hell. And it's about her anger and her revenge, and whether or not that gives her the fulfillment that she unknowingly desires.
So it's like a thriller.
No, it's a comedy.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a drama comedy.
I'm scared already.
Yeah, but maybe I painted it wrong. It's like she just tries to ruin his career and stuff, and makes him hurt a little bit. And he has to try to win her back.
Okay. Can you talk about who's attached already? Or you can't speak about
I think we can say we have Rocco in the CO, and then we are in negotiations with the actress.
Okay.
Which is actually literally, I have been on the phone for 3 hours last night, and then another hour this morning, just in talks. And it's really tough because we're in LA, and what is it? It's like, I don't know how many hours the Philippines is, but
Yeah.
I just know that the conversations run really late into the night and early in the morning.
And you're jet lagged.
And that.
So is your actress like American or
Filipino.
Like Filipino?
Yeah, I casted Filipino. And even when I was casting Dancing on My Own, I was looking in the Philippines to bring here, because the pool here is very small. Of Filipino actors. It's like between like Vincent Rodriguez and like a bunch of other it's tough. I mean, like, you go to an agency, I'm like, hey, I need a Filipino comedian or an actor, and they'll give you the usual suspects who aren't necessarily the ones you want for the role.
Yeah.
And there's only a handful of us,
Which is, I'm glad you brought that up, because I mean, like, as you know, Film Creative is a group of Filipino filmmakers. We have actors and stuff like that. Like, but coming from a producer's perspective, and like the actors that's watching this and future producers, like, how can Filipino American actors or even Asian American actors like get to that next level, or even like be seen by producers like
create your own
yourselves?
content. I think creating your own content is being seen by those producers, mobilizing it yourself, because no one's going to do it for you. Writers today are starting to implement more Filipino culture into which is really great, which I'm really super excited about. Like watching My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and seeing a Filipino family portrayed on network television for the first time. Like, at the end of season 1, I was like crying. And I'm like, ironically, it's like I've heard of Rachel Bloom. We all came up in New York at the same time. You know, she had her UCB troupe and like, you know, all those, and you hear it intermingling, but watching her show up there, and she started out creating her own content. I don't know if you guys know that, but she put out YouTube videos, and I think that showrunner discovered her and where she is now. But that show, you know, seeing, you know, her character try to make dinuguan, you know, it's like really funny, and I was just like so excited about it. And I think as a Filipino American community and filmmakers, you know, I love finding this group, and I searched out for this group. It was something that was drastically missing in my path, in my journey. And it's great seeing it. It's like, oh wow, I could write all this content. I have a group of writers that I work with and producers, and a lot of our content is diverse content, and it's, you know, content that stories from the underserved communities about love, about, you know, just and they tend to skew millennial, but the thing is, it's like people crave these stories. I mean, look at how Black Panther did.
Oh my God, so good.
It's so good, and then it becomes a part of their identity. And there's so many Filipino Americans here. It's like, why isn't there something we can latch onto?
Yeah.
You know, that we can all support together and like celebrate and wear our barongs to the cinema, you know, or kind of. But you know, that only exists if we make it, and if we got to make enough noise too when it comes out.
And I think aside from just noise and creating content, like I think even this younger generation has a more open mind than what the studios or even networks perceive them to be.
Sure,
like,
absolutely. But it also comes down to buying power too, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
So studios are great, and they're the people in development. Also don't, you know, they're kind of like, oh great, Black Panther works, you know, we'll make other projects like Black Panther. There needs to be something from the Filipino community that organically grows on its own. It needs to make its own noise. So then it happened with My Big Fat Greek Wedding back in like the late 90s, you know.
Was it that long ago?
Was it 2000?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it's got to be driven by the community. It's got to be supported by the community.
Which I think you bring up, aside from just the support, like just going to theaters and watching it, like, you know, entrepreneurs or business owners, you know, there has to be some form of synergy where corporates or businesses support the Filipino creatives and stuff like that. I mean, whatever the formula is, but I think it's just the community helping build material, build content, funding things, you know, even if like, you know, whether it's doing crowdfunding.
Sure.
You should do that. Or even like as little as craft services, you know, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
I think it's so important. And then for you as you built up to become a producer now, like let's go back to like your origins too.
Okay.
Like particularly supporting businesses, like how tell the audience like how you got started into filmmaking.
Oh
and
man. Okay. Well, back in the day, my dad and I emigrated to the United States when I was 8 years old in 1992. My mom was a nurse. She was part of that program where they needed nurses, and so we chain migrated to America, and we were granted citizenship. It was like, great. But my dad was a photographer, and he started shooting weddings and stuff, and I would help him because it was good money, and you know, that's what some Filipino parents think their children are for, to, you know, help.
Child labor.
And so I started loading film, and then I was like, oh, you know, we got all this film, I'll start shooting photography. And then I started shooting photography, and then I started getting really good at it. And so for my 60th birthday, my dad wanted to expand his business, and so he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, why don't you give me a video camera? And he bought me a really expensive SVHS 3CCD video camera.
Wow.
And instead of a car, it cost the whole editing system, and that, like, I had this thing called the Casablanca and like a 2-deck linear. It costs as much as a car. And so then I started, okay, well, you spent all this money, I'm going to learn how to shoot weddings. In high school, I started a business with him of shooting weddings. And my friends thought I was a drug dealer because I was making so much money shooting these weddings, because I would shoot the weddings like I would watch romantic comedies. They were like really sappy and beautiful, and they used long lenses, and this is pre-YouTube, y'all.
Wow.
So I started shooting weddings, and then while I had the video camera, my friends and I, who were a bunch of slackers and goofballs, were like, let's make some horror films. And around New Jersey and New York were these like abandoned buildings, and we would go in there. I'm like, oh, a bunch of kids hanging out.
Going
they're
rogue.
gonna kill me. They were so dumb and they were so bad. But then a program at NYU noticed it, and I applied to that program, and it was called the NYU Future Filmmakers Program. It was William H. Cosby's program. Bill Cosby. Thanks, Bill. But and they came in, and they taught me they teach you how to make films, and they have incredible filmmakers to come in and talk about it, and like the NYU's like staff, and so you'd go in there and you'd see like Spike Lee, and then like all these like huge filmmakers talk about their craft and the process, and you learn from them. And I keep up with this solid foundation of how to make film, and so. Once I got past that, I started making short films with my friends, and then I got to film school at NYU and at the School of Visual Arts. And while doing that, I was supported by my parents. They were really supportive.
Aww.
I thought they was like, oh man, they want me to be a nurse or a doctor or a lawyer. They're like, I told them, I was like, Mom, Dad, I want to be into film, and they're like, okay, sige. And make sure you learn how to make money first. And so I was like, okay. So I went into it with that in mind. And then one of the things that we had to do was make a short film. And my budget for the short film was $30,000. I don't have $30,000 lying around. Even if I shoot weddings, I was still paying for my tuition. That was expensive. And so at the time, I was growing up poor. So the only way I knew how to make money was either to be a prostitute or a drug dealer.
Oh.
And so,
But you made both work somehow.
yeah. And I knew I couldn't be a prostitute because I didn't look that great. So
Hey,
hey,
don't say that.
I know. But so then I was like, how am I going to get weed to sell? And so, avert your eyes,
Entrepreneur.
kids. Entrepreneur. I started making music videos with this guy named Dan Melamed, Dan the Man. And one of the ways we would get paid was through the ish. And so we would run around, and I took the school equipment, and we made backpack rap music videos, like these things in black and white.
And is this on tape or is this digital?
No, this is film. This is 16 millimeter
Ooh.
film.
That's hardcore, guys.
Black and white, so it was Tri-X. It wasn't that expensive, and so we would make
For
these.
some of the YouTubers here, they don't know the struggle of film.
We didn't have your A7Ss and 5Ds and C300s.
Final Cut.
Final Cut. Oh, we had Final Cut, which was just starting out. But anyway, I digress. This is a really long story. I'm sorry. I apologize. So I got to raise some money because they got me the product, and I was able to distribute the product.
Statute of limitations over, I think.
Hey, we're in Cali now. We're in Cali now.
And I was able to raise the money, and then I would work at the school and stuff and do all these things. And the short was okay. It did okay. It was a little violent. It was called A Child Called It. And it was about a kid who was abused by his mom, and he grew up and he carried that abuse onto his spouse.
Dark.
I don't know why I chose that. I felt really strongly about it. But the short didn't do that well, but it did okay.
Yeah.
But the guys I did the music videos for really liked it. And eventually that group became G Unit. And that group, and I started doing videos for them and Dan and all that. And by the time they got picked up in the major label like Interscope and stuff, I started producing music videos with them. And we started doing late night BET videos. We started doing, and our budgets grew from like 30,000 to 100,000.
Wow.
It kept growing, and our little company grew. And there was a point where I was like coloring 2 music videos. We shot a 35 millimeter at this color house. And this is back in the day where it was like $600 an hour to color a video, because you're doing like what's called a 2K film scan, and you're scanning the film. And I was running 2 bays, two colorists, and I went outside, and my professor was actually running the color house. And he was like, "Hey, what do you guys want for lunch?" I said, "I'd love sushi." And he goes, "What about your bosses?" And I'm like, "I'm the boss." And they're like, "It's just me." And he goes, "Nobody can be here because we're shooting another video." And so the next day I was in school, and he was like, "Why are you still here?" And I was like, "I don't know. I need a degree, right?" And he was like, "You don't need a degree." And it's like, and that was when I left school. And that was when I left film school, and I started producing music videos. But then my mom got breast cancer, and which was really hard on me. So I did what all Asians do when you're dealing with something traumatic, and that is you work more and you bottle it up, which is not healthy. And that caught up with me, and I had a breakdown. And so I ended up selling my share of the company and moving to Southeast Asia. I moved to Cebu, and I got a job, and I teamed up with a guy named Mike Gleisner to work on a Bigfoot, and starting a school called the International Academy of Film and Television, because he wanted to make films in the Philippines using local talent, but the local talent needed to be educated, so we started teaching them, and which is something I'm actually really proud of. That school is still around. It's still
there,
strong.
right?
They're still making films and still supporting filmmakers. I'm convinced that they kind of help usher a movement of Filipino filmmakers. And I did that for about a year until I moved to LA.
Yeah, I do remember like the ads because they were like looking to hire filmmakers and camera folks, and I seriously considered doing that, but I just had projects. I'm like, can I live in the Philippines?
It was the best. It was for me. I needed it to kind of like refocus, refine my soul, and remember why I loved it.
Yeah.
Because when you're 23, 22, and you're making $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 music videos, and you're lying about your age, right? So I was lying to people, telling them I was 28 at the time, because no one's gonna wire a 21-year-old that much money. Who just started his business account like 6 months ago. And there was a lot of pressure, and there was like a lot of pressure to do really well. And so it all caught up with me, and it was like, so then I started teaching, and I started, working there, and it was good. It was, and then eventually I found myself here, and I started working at a company here.
How long were you in the Philippines for?
About a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then I came here, and I was like, I'm going to move to LA, and I'm going to follow my dreams to direct. And I got here, and it was the writer's strike. And it was really tough. And that was a really humbling experience. And it was great because they then forced me to start from the bottom again. And so I worked as a PA for the 82nd Academy Awards.
Oh, wow. I was at the 82nd Academy Awards. I was working the red carpet.
That's funny.
Like,
it's like, no, small world, right?
I watched it.
That was a tough one because that was at the tail end of the writer's strike. And I remember one of the jokes was during the opening number, they were supposed to be like fake props because, the whole industry had shut down up until that point. But yeah, because of that, I ended up getting like all these other jobs. I was promoted from a PA in 5 days to a coordinator, which was really cool. And then I started, because I knew how to produce, but I moved to LA to direct. And so I started doing like random jobs until I teamed up with this guy named Mike Mahale, who runs a company called Gorilla Hollywood. And Gorilla was like, had this overall deal with Warner Brothers and stuff. And so he brought me in and took me into to direct music videos, not produce. And so I was also able to use a lot of what I knew, from producing to and jumping into the directing seat. And I did that for a while. I did a TV show called Gallery Girls that aired on Bravo, which was really cool. That took me back and forth to New York and LA. But then I was like really stepping, trying to push and establish myself. And I started doing more music videos here in LA and writing on all of them. And eventually, I want to say about 2014, I was like, I think it's time to jump into narrative. And so I started writing, and I started taking jobs and directing shorts and episodics and pilots and things like that.
And you've done some pretty diverse types of projects.
Yeah.
especially the most recent one I heard of was having blind actors, like
Yeah.
real blind actors, which is huge because that's a whole, different niche in itself.
Yes.
Yeah, it was. It was a project that was brought to me by Lindsay Nyman. Lindsay is amazing.
Titled the Blind Center,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's called the Blind Center, and she was like, "Hey, I have these students from the Braille Institute, and we want to make a project because, there's so many projects in Hollywood where they cast sighted people to play, blind characters, and it's like, well, blind actors can play blind, these characters as well, and so I was like, okay, let's do it, and I think she raised the money in like 2 weeks.
Wow.
20 grand appeared out of nowhere. And so we started shooting it. We shot it at like the Philippine Rec Center over
Oh, nice.
here in Echo Park. And it was amazing. It was a really fulfilling experience, and they were so talented, and I think it was the first time that it was like a cast that big of blind actors, and it was a comedy. It was about how people act around people with disabilities, and like you're like super pandering and super like, and it makes them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But at least I guess it's there. Just treat people with disabilities like normal people.
Now, were those actors, have they been acting for a while, or
They
what
started
has-
they were at a class, they were
Oh,
in
okay,
a
so
school.
they were
and
training.
They were training, and
I have a girlfriend. She used to put on plays with blind actors.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And her name is Polita, and she was telling me about it last summer. And so I wonder if some of those.
was it Theater for the Blind?
It might be.
Yeah,
It might be.
in
Yeah.
Culver
And
City.
it's just amazing because as an actress, you don't really think about those things,
Yeah.
unless it really kind of comes across. And you're right. There are plenty of sighted actors who have played blind or whatever, disabilities
Yeah.
or disadvantages. And it's wonderful to hear that people are actually casting accurately.
Yeah.
And I do understand, I've spoken to some executives for diversity and like CBS, NBC, that's one of the initiatives they're trying to do, aside from like casting people of color, or they're trying to find talent with disabilities.
Absolutely.
And actually, I think we have a clip from the Blind Center. So like instead of talking about it, let's just show them a little trailer of what Blind Center is all about. So here, check it out. This is the Blind Center by Tim Cruz.
Branches. A bird falls from your nest on top. Oh, yes, perfect. And take your spot in the forest. Yes, and a breeze has swept through. Whoosh. The pupils at this school need drama class more than they need any other class. Art class, great. Cooking class, great. Mobility skills, okay. Braille reading and writing, maybe. But what's the one thing in this life that separates us from the animals? What is it, I ask you? The theater. Hands on the hips, chest out, breathe in your glory, and never breathe it out. Hold that glory with you always. Okay, breathe out. Yes, good, but hold on to the glory. That stays with you. Breathing is just necessary for life, but glory is with you always.
Gary's stupid as hell, but I like his crazy tail.
And we're back.
We're back, yeah. Took the words right out of my mouth.
I got there.
And yeah, that was a great trailer. I mean, how long did that take you guys to film?
It took us 2 days to film, but about a week of pre-production. It took about 2-3 weeks to post. It was so the way that the short is framed is actually really curious. So the film starts out as the end of a fundraiser video, and then it stops, and you hear a voiceover. It's like, "Is there anything else?" And he said, "Oh, we can look at the outtakes." So the actual short film is the outtakes from this fake documentary that they were making. And you find that within the outtakes and the B-roll and everything is a story about the actual real struggles of a place like this, that they have the same problems that any regular institution has. And the reason we did it that way was I was talking to this actor and I said, what are some of the most difficult things about being blind? And she said, it's one thing that you can't see, it's another thing to feel like you're not seen. And there comes a point where, because you're disabled, people would go out of their way to not interact with you because the disability makes them feel uncomfortable. And that's very real. And so I said, why don't we then just make a short film where there is a story in the things that are usually ignored? And so that is like the premise and the framing of the short that we decided to, execute that way.
And as a director, I mean, was that the first time you've directed a person with disability or a blind person? And like how different or similar was that to directing people with vision?
I think it's I don't think the disability got in the way. In fact, what was really wonderful was there were some actors who could feel where the light was, and if they knew where the key light was, they knew where the camera would be, and so they would play off the line, and you wouldn't even have to tell them where the camera was at.
Nice.
And it was really wonderful. I have worked with other disabled talent, not whether. And I think I treat it the same way, where you try to extract their truth and you try to find the rhythm, or you try to get them to match the rhythm.
Okay.
Right? And so as a director, your main responsibility is maintaining atmosphere, tone, and control. And so you're juggling that with your keys, with your DP, with your production designer. And in coaching the actor in the dialogue, what you're trying to sustain is this rhythm between them. And so new actors don't know about that new rhythm yet, because and that's something that you develop through training, through your school, and there are so many directors out there who are like, oh, your improv's really good. I'm like, that's not improv, that's just the way they speak. That's all scripted. That's all in there. It's the inflection that they use feels nuanced and new because they're improvising in the sense of how they're saying the words. But the words are there. The words are real. Maybe the emotion is, kind of. And so what you try to do is you try to maintain that balance, that particular cadence between the two actors or that one actor. And you try to sustain that throughout the entire picture, and you try to sustain that through the narrative. And so, again, if it's a new actor, you just coach them to get there. And then you try to get them to that place where they're free to, give themselves. Okay. That's super technical. I'm sorry.
It's so fascinating to, to hear that, the actors that you had on that particular project, that, the struggle is that they're not seen for, for who they are, or even being there, because I feel like it's so relatable on so many different levels. If you don't speak whatever language it is in the country that you're in, sometimes people will straight up not even look at you in the face and talk to you, and it's almost like you go into this invisible mode. So that it's so fascinating. I'm so excited to see it.
I'd love to.
When will it be out?
Well, it is actually about to play at the Garden State Film Festival in New Jersey.
Nice.
We won the grand jury in LA at a film festival here, and it played in Nevada. And it's great. It was invited to screen at Sundance and at Toronto, because not in competition though.
Okay.
And it's been a fun journey for it, and we have another kind of a project behind it, with some of the same players, called Bits. We don't know what's going to happen with that, but we're hoping that Lindsay takes the project and continues it more, because it is actually also a proof of concept of a series that could happen.
Yeah, that's even just a TV series or or a sitcom or whatever. That's actually great and interesting concept.
Right?
Now, going into that angle, where do you see the industry headed in the future? Whether it's 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and what any advice that you might have to upcoming directors or filmmakers with that projection?
I think the technology has afforded you to be able to create content that can sustain in the mass market. You've got camera formats that can capture at a high quality that you can compress and simulate high quality. Like back when I was coming up, in order for me to make a broadcast quality content, I had to shoot it on film. And so that's $110, just 10 minutes of raw footage that actually needed about another $100. So for every 10 minutes of raw footage was $250. Right?
Wow.
Now
Oh my God,
I can
it's so
shoot
expensive.
10 minutes on a 5D Mark III in 4K for nothing because it's just all digital. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I think the quality of the content needs to sustain. So watch as many YouTube videos, and I think that so that you know what quality is. I think that's one of the things that's lacking. But if anything, it's if you tell a good story, if you tell a compelling narrative about the human experience, about your experiences as a minority or your I think it'll catch on, and I think that is the future. That is the future of this industry, is how capable are you at creating compelling content with your friends and putting it out there. It used to be determined by these gatekeepers in Hollywoods and the studios, but there's like OTT networks and SVOD and streaming, and Amazon has like these programs where you can put your product, and they'll pay you. They'll pay you for every stream of your project. It's changing. Content is king, and you're all in charge. And so
That is great advice.
So the future is bright for filmmakers.
the future
Make
is
your own
so
content,
bright.
guys.
It's
Make
like
your
a
own
full
content.
screen.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna.
Can you tell us really quick how people can find you, social media wise, website?
Sure. So my go-to Instagram social media handle is called Tim Cruz Loves You. It's TIMCRUZ Loves You. Luckily, you can just Google Tim Cruz director, and it just pops up my face. But yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. You can get in touch with me anything, and my website and whatnot. But hopefully, you go out there. If you see the Blind Center, go out and check it out. If you see Wilber, Wildy. That's the Filipino film. Hopefully you come out and support it, and yeah, but keep supporting, keep building each other up, and we'll make enough noise.
And yeah, I just want to say thank you for coming out here.
Thanks for having me.
Great, is very informative and insightful. Like you are just a treasure trove of knowledge, man.
Oh, thanks. Salamat.
And I hope you can come back and join us in the future.
Yeah, man.
Again, Tim Cruz, please follow him, check out his movies. I think today we've learned a lesson from Tim, aside from just creating content. Just keep your friends. You never know how you guys will rise up together, and stay connected and build those relationships, because friendships is what's gonna make it or break it in this industry. So thank you again, Tim, for coming out to Voices. I'm Walter Talents, and this is
Arlene De La Pena.
And this is Film Creative's podcast.
Voices.
Voices.
So cheesy. I love that. When you guys did that, I was like, nah.
This episode of Film Creative Voices podcast brought to you by the wonderful cast and crew. Director and producer Rodney Cahuto, producer and host Walter Talens, producer and host Arlene De La Pena, director of photography and producer Winston Fernando, cam op and sound and producer Charles Gray, production coordinator Sarnika Lim, stage director Angela Paviera, cam op and BTS Homer Dulu, cam op and PA Bernice Bernardo. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for next week's episode.